You want to come with me?
Nope.
Gee, thanks.
Hello and welcome to another bad movie review. This time we are looking at Housebound. This is a 2003 film running about 72 minutes, also known as The House on Bloodbath Hill. It's filmed largely in Roseburg, Oregon in the US, and it features a cast of largely B-movie actors, straight-to-video stuff mainly, such as Kylene Wetherell, Erin Arbogast, Jenn Laharty, Warren Blyth, Michael Hegg, Robert Sumner, Shannon Barksdale, Joe Sherlock, and Alan Winston. It was directed by John Bowker and written by John Bowker. So we start out with two people wandering around the woods with big revolvers, seemingly hunting something or other, and things do not look like they're going well. And then we jump to 6 months later. It is now July, a hot July day, as the radio says, and we meet a man named Terry and a woman named Nancy. They are out cutting down a Christmas tree to celebrate Christmas in July. Nancy wants nothing to do with this. She's a very grumpy individual, and that's around the time that we learn that Terry is doing this specifically for Heidi because she didn't have very much of a Christmas. For some reason, he's wearing a leather jacket in July, so I imagine his car smells a lot like funk, but they manage to find a tree and cut it down. Unfortunately, something lives in the tree. Next, we meet Heidi, who is an agoraphobic shut-in. Obviously, agoraphobia means that she doesn't like going outside, and it makes her pass out whenever she does. So she is pretty much trapped in the house, even though she otherwise seems physically capable of leaving. And she seems to spend her time playing computer games and reading a book called The Hammer Will Fall, which was actually written by Tim Ritter, who is the executive producer of this movie and has written several books and apparently been involved in several movies, mostly B movies. So that was a nice hidden in joke, I guess. Now Nancy is Heidi's sister and seems to be highly resentful and very bitter about having to help her sister all the time. She's largely indifferent to Heidi and doesn't want to do anything for her, and she's been that way apparently since their parents died. So Heidi is her largely only connection to the outside world other than Terry, who is clearly in love with Heidi. Now these are the days before online shopping, so everything would have been done mail order and she wouldn't be able to order home delivery for groceries and stuff like that. So these lifelines are actually critical to her. They don't really explore that too much. We just get the impression that Nancy resents everything about her sister to the point where she just doesn't care about her life at all. Now when Terry tries to confess his love, he's given the "we're just friends" speech, which of course makes him incredibly uncomfortable, so he leaves. Now we do find out here after Terry leaves that there is something living in the tree that he brought, and it escapes and goes on a murderous spree. This gets the attention of a couple of men in black who seem to be able to trace the thing every time it kills somebody. That's a really unuseful way of tracking somebody. Now this creature is very odd looking. It looks very much like a toupee with spider legs, but it did remind me of an old Sectaurs toy from the 80s that actually had a glove on it, so you were actually this spider's legs. It looks a lot like that, but without the face and saddle. So it's kind of this weird looking critter that obviously was kind of thrown together with what they had to work with. Still better than a robot monster, but that's not saying a lot. But the abilities of this creature are actually pretty well done. It seems to be able to bite people and instantly infect them to where this like infection spreads throughout their body as this like spider tree branch looking thing. And it really is a good effect that's done very, very well in this movie. So it kind of spreads out throughout the body, and then they start leaking fluids, and then they vomit up this butterscotch pudding, and they melt into skeletons, I guess? That's a little vague. But a lot of people buy the farm that way. There is one issue that I noticed during one of the killings that takes place in a garage, where there is a red van. You can see the shadows of the crew, and partly a reflection of the camera tripod. That's something that a lot of low-budget filmmakers seem to not recognize recognize is that reflections don't just happen in windows, they also happen in the side of shiny cars. Probably be good to dirty up your vehicles before filming, I guess, or adjust your lighting. So after killing, the spider creature goes back to the tree and hangs out there for a while to digest, I guess. It doesn't really feed on people because there's nothing really taken from them. They just sort of disintegrate, so it just injects people with stuff. Although they call it feeding, I don't really know what it's feeding on. That's never really explained. We do get this weird flashback scene where somebody is telling a young Heidi these like weird inappropriate stories, and this one is about her getting lost in the woods and contemplating death. It's very strange because clearly Heidi's supposed to be a young child, seemingly about 10 or under, and this lady is telling this very esoteric story with lots of metaphors and big words that this kid is not going to understand. It's just a very strange tale, so I'm not really sure why that was in there except maybe to pad time onto the film, but it's kind of a weird little side piece that's in there, and it does add a lot of like strangeness to the film, but it doesn't really explain anything. It's just this weird flashback. So later when Nancy goes to a party, Terry and Heidi are hanging out because she's lonely and he's apparently not getting the hint, and the power goes out while they're playing PlayStation 1, and he has to go out to the sketchy barn on the property to find the fuse box because apparently nobody's updated the electrical in this place in 40 or 50 years, and it's as sketchy looking of a fuse box as you can find because a little bit of water leak above it's gonna cause a real problem. But he manages to get that working again right when the spider creature is out on the hunt again, and Nancy has to come back from the trip to her party to get her wallet, and things are going sideways, and we do finally get a resolution to the storyline. Now the Men in Black characters are largely side characters till pretty much the end of the film, and they don't do a lot, they don't really say much, but it's pretty evident that they're not just normal G-men. Overall, it's not an overly scary film, but it's actually not bad. The effects are a very mixed bag because the creature looks kind of goofy. You don't really see it very much, you mostly see through its eyes, which is probably for the better, but that's compensated with the special effects of the infection and the butterscotch pudding budget that went with this film. So I counted about 10 for the body count and 1 plot point, and considering its runtime, that's actually not too bad of numbers. The only problems that I really saw was that the film is incredibly granulated, especially during night shots, so there's obviously not a very good print of this. It looks like it was shot mainly with what was at the time the early digital video cameras, and it's just not up to snuff for modern televisions or monitors, so it's actually going to look a little pixelated or out of focus almost on your screen. And the acting wasn't too bad. There's a few people that were clearly new to acting, but largely it's pretty standard B-movie acting, so I didn't really have a problem with that. Like I said, the special effects were a little bit of a mixed bag. The sound effects of gunshots were horrific though. Those were terrible. They sounded like pop guns. So it would have been nice if they had bought an audio effects package of some kind with gunshot sounds or gone out to a gun range and recorded some sounds. Otherwise, it was a fairly entertaining movie. I expected it to be way worse than it was, and considering how incredibly low budget this was, I was pretty thoroughly entertained. It had to set up for a sequel, which was completely unnecessary, but this movie definitely could have been remade at some point down the line with a higher budget and made into a better B movie. But as it is, I'd still recommend it. Even with a shorter runtime, it was very fast paced, the dialogue was well written, even if sometimes poorly delivered, and it didn't require a large cast of people. Some of the camera work was a little rough, but aside from minor complaints like that, its main issue was the fact that it was shot 20 plus years ago on some more over-the-counter type consumer electronics, making it very difficult to watch on modern equipment. But honestly, my DVD copy worked pretty well, and I could tell largely what was going on. It was just a little grainier during night shots or darkness, and that got a little bit annoying at times, but overall a pretty fun film with an interesting idea. Is it silly? Absolutely. But it was fun, and the descriptions that you see for the film online and on the DVD box aren't quite accurate, so I wouldn't go by that, but it definitely had some cool ideas and a pretty good body count, so worth a watch if you get a chance to check it out. It's kind of hard to find, but I know it has been on Tubi and Amazon before, and of course it was on DVD, which is how I obtained it, and I'm glad I picked it up. I thought it was pretty fun. So give it a chance and see what you think. Let me know in the comments what your opinion of it was. For an ultra low budget film, I was entertained. But that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.